All right, so today in the shop we're going to be looking at how we're going to go about keeping that engine warm for when I'm out in the mountains, going through deep powder, etc. And you might wonder why bother? It's because that engine is, just like most engines, meant to operate under a relatively limited temperature range. You don't really want it too hot and you don't want it too cold either. So keeping some way to insulate the engine itself can actually help maintain the engine at operating temperature, which is important for engine performance, oil flow, etc. So this is the option I chose. This is the C3 engine skin, and there are other options available. Previously, I actually made these just out of some material. It's almost like a thin plastic, and then used a punch to put these holes in there. So, or eyelets, whatever you want to call those. And this works pretty good, and this was honestly super cheap. It's just the cost of materials and borrowing that tool for putting these in. And these work good. The downside to this and sometimes other engine blankets is it does allow snow to get in and around it sometimes. The other thing too is that some of the other engine blankets, they actually inhibit airflow from the radiators, so you could actually get even too hot on some of the warmer days. So the downside is you may have a situation where it works really good when you're very cold weather and deep powder, but then if it warms up a little bit, then you're stuck taking that thing off on the trail. Which isn't the end of the world and may happen anyways. But the C3 claims that you won't have to do that because it just hugs the engine itself and doesn't inhibit airflow or anything like that. The other benefit that they say is that it actually helps to keep a bunch of snow from collecting in and around it, so potentially some weight savings there. And you know, looking through the options of these, I for sure can see that this is, from what I've seen, the one that best approximates the shape of the engine. So this thing really hugs the engine very tightly. It looks like it's pretty easy to install. It's got the zipper here. It does have a little bit extra thermal protection here for near the exhaust. And this is a pretty good option. Now, price range for this one here was $200 plus shipping, but some of the other ones actually go up to like $600. Some of those actually provide a little bit of protection, which might be good for, you know, banging up against trees, etc. But that said, you know, your benefits of this one a little bit less protection, but a little bit more simple, a little cheaper, and the aforementioned benefit of hugging the engine a little bit better, maybe providing a little bit better airflow. But anyways, in general, this is on the less expensive end of the spectrum, around $200, but they can go up to like $600. Or you could go this kind of route where you make your own stuff, as long as you don't have to purchase that press to put these in. That's pretty inexpensive. All right, so let's see how this thing goes on. All right, so now that snow skin is installed, I'll show you a few tips in terms of how I went about that. So there's this little strap back here. There's two elastic straps with a clip. I actually went in there with a long neck needle nose, kind of grab that and pull it out, because otherwise it can be pretty hard to kind of reach your hand in there with the fuel line, etc. So that made that a little bit easier. Now, also, this is a pretty tight fit down here between the frame and the engine. There's not a lot of space. So I just started it in the back where there is a little more space, and then I was able to kind of pull it through. So you just have to be patient. And there is a pre-made hole for the shifter there. I had to remove my skid plate before I could put this in, and I may actually have to make some modifications because it's pretty tight between this guard and here. If I have to, I'll just kind of bend that out a little bit, which I think I might have to. Now, one kind of tip that I always recommend when you get these skid plates, especially when it's on a steel frame bike, I put a little really thick duct tape on there. And that just helps to prevent rubbing on the frame because that will expose the metal and then you'll get some rust. So a little bit of duct tape there is actually pretty good to help keep that nice and tight and keep it from rubbing. And you can see up here where that zipper was, that is actually a pretty nice feature. The only thing I'm kind of wondering about a little bit is there's a bit of a gap between the skin and the engine on this side. Everywhere else it hugs pretty tight. We'll have to see if it ends up having any difficulties collecting snow. But overall, I like it quite a bit. Here's what it looks like on this side. And we'll have to see if there's any issues between kind of melting. There is that special cover there that goes between it and the exhaust, but that said, I think it'll work out pretty well. Even has that window there for your oil level, which is pretty nice. So overall, pretty happy with it. Here's now what it looks like with the skid plate in place. And as I kind of suspected, I had to actually bend these out. I just put this part in a vise and kind of bent on it, and slowly got to where I needed to be because I didn't want the aluminum kind of digging into the guard there. So I bent that one and that one. It actually looks pretty good right now, but don't be afraid to modify things a little bit just to make sure that everything does fit right. Online, I'd seen them use the carbon fiber skid plate made by P3, which is a good piece. I had that on this bike a while back, but I broke it off when I hit it in the whoop section, so then I went with a more robust aluminum plate. So you could consider that. It may require a little less modification, but this aluminum skid plate, I think that's from Works Connection. That thing has held up and proven to be a good purchase.